talk about electron emission and various type of electron emission. So as we have seen in discharge tube, when various phenomena occurs, there are at a particular pressure that is 0.01 millimeter of mercury column pressure. At that pressure there is cathode ray that comes out, and we have seen that this cathode ray is actually basically the electrons, the electron particle. It means that electrons come out and ionization takes place. So around this time, around 1887, Hertz was experimenting with electromagnetic waves. And we have seen in electromagnetic waves that various type of the spectrum of electromagnetic wave is very huge, and there are different people who were working on this particular spectrum, and Hertz was one of them who was working with electromagnetic spectrum. So when he was working with electromagnetic spectrum, he found that if the UV rays are bombarded to certain metal, then the electromagnetic discharge loops becomes much more bigger and brighter. It means that somewhere the electrons or the charged particle that comes out from the surface of the metal, and if you irradiate a surface with UV rays, then this type of electrons come out. That time he didn't say that it was electron that was coming out. He said that those particles that comes out, which are very much similar to the particle of cathode ray. So from this experiments we see that if a particular metal surface is given certain amount of energy, then from the surface of the metal the electrons can be emitted out. To emit out this electron, the electron must do certain amount of work, and this work is done against the forces that is binding it at the surface, right? So these electrons have to do this work, and to do this work it requires certain energy. So if there is no external energy provided, the electrons would be bounded and they will be there involved with certain amount of force that ties them up in the metal surface. But if there are certain external energy provided, if we provide certain energy to the particular electron, then electron gets the enough energy, if it have the enough energy to come out, to do enough work to come out from the surface, then we see the electron emission happening. And there are various ways to make the electron emit from the surface. So the various ways of electron emission, we have various of this listed. First one is thermionic emission, field emission, photoelectric emission, secondary emission. So let's one by one see what are those. So suppose if a metal surface is heated enough, right? So if it gets enough heated up, then the heat that is provided to this surface, that heat energy is, if it is enough, if it is highly heated up, this heat itself can eject the electron out of the metal surface. And in this process of electron emission, we call it as thermionic emission. The number of electron that would be coming out in this process is given by this formula, and it also depends on the temperature at which these are the constant A and small b. So this is the temperature by which the electrons, what decides, the temperature is the what deciding factor. It decides that how many electrons may come out, because the temperature is the one which is due to the heat energy, and the heat energy is the energy given from outside, which takes out the electron from the surface. So this phenomena is called thermionic emission. Now coming to the field emission, various fields like electric, magnetic, and various fields can eject the electron out from the metal surface. So electric field around 10.8 volt per meter, around that level, if you provide an electric field, if you expose a metal around that electric field, the electrons come out of this metal surface. Coming to the photoelectric emission, if a very high frequency electromagnetic wave or photons, or what we have now called it as electromagnetic wave or photo light wave, so this, if this electromagnetic wave of very high energy, which is a very high frequency and low wavelength, like what we have learned in electromagnetic spectrum, like UV, X-ray, gamma ray, also all this very highly energetic electromagnetic waves which are having very low wavelength and very high frequency, if we because they are very highly energetic wave, if they are given at a particular frequency, if they are exposed to this metal surface, from the surface the electrons come out, and this process we call it as photoelectric emission. Last is the secondary emission. Generally, if any surface is bombarded with certain particle, and these particles are generally a type of electrons only, so they are a channel or series of electrons only. If it is bombarded to the metal surface, then from here, if this is hit with one electron, then this electron comes out, and by this way, if it having a sufficient energy to knock the electron out, then it will knock out the electron from the surface, and by this way, when we have the electron emission, we call it as secondary emission. This electron which is hitting, this is called primary electron, and the electron that is coming out from the surface, we call it as secondary electron. So in this case, particles like alpha particle, beta particle, which are radioactive particle, we will learn about them in radioactivity topic. So they are very, very highly particle, and if they are bombarded to the metal surface, the electrons gets knocked out and they come out of the surface, and this is what we call it as the secondary emission of electron. So what we see that there are various ways, or there are various external energies that can knock out the electron from any surface. So in this case, it depends that like whether the electron can be easily removed, or it will be very hard to remove an electron. So it is being seen that metal surface are the surface, or metals are the one which very easily releases the electrons, because the work that electron has to do to come out, or the energy required for electron to come out, is very least, I would say least in the case of metals, because if you need very least amount of energy, then once you bombard with a kind of enough energy, then easily the electrons come out. So that we see in case of metals generally, that it is since the energy to release an electron is very less, that's how with the help of external energy, when you give sufficient amount of energy for the electron to work, to do enough work to come out against all the force, then what we see, the electron emission happens. And there are various ways to provide this energy, and that's how there are various types of electronic emission that we see here.
If you like the video, then press the like button, subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon.